أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وأما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المتين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون ولقد فتنا الذين من قبلهم فليعلمن الله الذين صدقوا وليعلمن الكاذبين صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings to each and every one of you, to Mu'mineen and Mu'minat worldwide, to our leadership, Maraji Taqleed, Maqam Mu'azzam al-Ahbari. This evening that we are beginning a short series of discussions concerning imtihanat, concerning tests that we face from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so since we have such limited time together, what is it, like 3 lectures? In this little bit of time, I'm going to do my very best to give to each and every one of us, and even for myself, a good understanding of what are the fundamentals of testing, that Allah tests us. Why does He test us? What's the philosophy behind this testing? Then we want to go into, after testing, what are the rules for these tests? How can we pass these tests? And then finally, we'll go into what is that biggest test, those biggest series of tests that we face in our life, and some pointers, some advice, inshallah, on how to pass these tests. You know, when I was in Hausa, there was an older man in Hausa, in Iran. He was a technician for IBM before he went into the Hausa age. Quite advanced age by the time he went into the Hausa. Maybe in his late 50s, early 60s. But even at that age, his grades, his studies were above most of us who were way younger than him. People that were in their 20s couldn't keep up with this 60-year-old man. Why? He told us something very important. He said that when he worked for IBM, he was the one who wrote the tests for all the people that work at IBM. He produced the tests. He had a gift for taking tests. So whenever we finished a chapter or read a book in class, you'd find students would go to him and sit down and say, what's going to be on the test? And he would be able to look at the textbook and tell you, this is going to be on the test. This is going to be on the test. This will not be on the test. And he can do this for any textbook. It doesn't mean that he has to be in the class. You can take your algebra textbook to him. You can take your calculus textbook to him. You can take your world history textbook to him. And he'll look at the textbook, never having read it before, and be able to tell you this is going to be on the test. This section will not be on the test. Don't worry about that. When it comes to taking a test, what we learned from this old man, very wise man, very intelligent man, what we learned from him was that there's a skill to taking tests. And it really has very little to do with how much you study. It has much more to do with how much you understand the subject matter. How much we understand the topic that we're being tested on, the ways in which we're being tested. And so, from this point of view, you can see that, I'm sure you could go out there and Google this. There's a technique There's a style to taking tests, examining the material that we're going to be tested on, that will help us in passing those tests. Over these next 3 nights, we're going to try to go into this discussion and lay it bare, inshallah. So let's begin with this verse of Quran, these verses of Quran that we read, inshallah. Send us salawat and we'll begin.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So I read for you the first 3 verses of Surah Al-Ankabut. Surah Al-Ankabut, the spider, chapter number 29 in the Quran. It's always been one of my favorite chapters of Quran. And specifically, these first few verses of this chapter, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim. Do men think that they will be left alone upon saying we believe and will not be tried? And certainly, we tried those before them. So Allah will certainly know those who are truthful, and He will certainly know who are the liars. Many of us have read this particular verse of Quran before. We've read similar verses of Quran before. And so I want to ask a question. Allah says in this verse of Quran that He tests us, and He says it in many places in Quran, that He tests us so that He can know who is truthful, and so that He can know who is a liar. So let's ask a question. Allah is testing us. Is Allah really testing us so that He can know who is truthful? So that He can know who's a liar? He already knows who's truthful. He already knows who's a liar. The test, and many times when we read this in the Quran, keep this in your mind, the test is not for Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing us not so that He can find out who's truthful and who's lying. No, He's testing us so that we can find out who is truthful and who is a liar. Tests in life are not for Allah's benefit. And we should not think that Allah tests us in life so that He can find out something about us, so that He can learn something about us, so that He can know something about our condition. The tests are for us, and they're meant to instruct and to guide and to cause growth and development for us. So, when we look at these verses, we see that right off the bat, Allah is not testing for His own benefit. He's testing so that we can know who is truthful and so that we can know who is the liar. Let's begin with our discussion then. Tests can be divided into 2 sections. Tests that Allah will give to human beings can be divided into 2 basic divisions: individual tests and communal tests. Tests that we face in our lives as individuals, as well as tests that we face in our lives as a community. Now, I started this series of discussions some months ago with the aim and the design to really get into communal tests. Because really, what we have in North America is a unique community. So before we get into individual tests, let's just make something clear. The community that you have here in Indiana, the community that exists of followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam around the country, around America, is a unique community. And I say that because it's made up of unique individuals. All of us have heard of that hadith that says that before the zuhur of Hazrat Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman,
اللهم صل على محمد.
all of us have heard this hadith that before the zuhur of the Imam, Islam will rise from the west. The sun will rise from the west. In this hadith, generally, it's interpreted to mean not that the sun will rise from the west, but that Islam will come from the west. If the sun were to rise from the west, it would necessarily demand the destruction of the entire universe. So in this hadith, they're not talking about the sun rising from the west. They're talking about Islam coming from the West. And so just to strengthen this point a little bit, all of these riwayat and ahadith that we read about Zuhur of the Imam, have you ever read anything where he's going to kill so many people in New York City? Or where he's going to kill so many people in Los Angeles? Or where he's going to kill so many people in, I don't know, Biloxi, in Florida? No. All of these hadith that you read, you find that who's he putting to death? People in the East. I mean, we have the riwayat about that. There's a dry riverbed in Qom. Buses park in that riverbed in Qom. No water flows through it. They say that at the time of the Zuhur of the Imam, that river will be filled with blood. You hear about Najaf? You hear about Karbala? How many people will be rounded up in Kufa and put to death by the Imam? But you never read any hadith that so many people will be rounded up in Miami and put to death. Why not? Because Islam will rise from the West. The community that we have here in North America is a unique community. Don't think that the immigrants, the brothers from other parts of the world, from Iraq, from Lebanon, from Iran, from Pakistan, from India, don't think that they are, don't even consider them as foreigners. They are part of the nation that Allah is creating in this part of the world. Part of the ummah that Allah is giving form to in the West. Understand something, the immigrants that come here, they're not the taxi drivers and the goat herders. These are people who are educated, cultured, have a drive, have a love for religion, and even though they may have come here seeking economic opportunities or educational opportunities, Islam in North America owes a deep debt of gratitude to that generation of immigrants that came here. Allah is assembling a team here. The best of the best is coming here. So those who are immigrants who are coming from other countries, they're not the goat herders and the camel herders from those societies. They are the best of the best from those societies, and they're coming here. And then amongst the converts, who's accepting Islam? The best of the best. The people who are, as they say in Persian, dilsuz, that their hearts are burning for Islam and for change and for an alternative. And so when you put these two together, the converts that are accepting Islam are the best of the best. The immigrants that are coming to the country, they are the best of the best. And in this nation now, we are assembling a team, a community that is vibrant and vital and necessary in North America. We face tests. And our success here, as individuals, as families, as communities, depends on how we deal with these tests that we will encounter here. Tests are for everyone. Rich and poor, tall and short, fat and slim, good looking and ugly. Everybody encounters tests in this life, and there's no escape from this fundamental of life, that tests are an integral part of life. And in fact, the believer cannot imagine life without test. Poverty or wealth, sickness or health, each of them only have meaning in the context of test. Halal and haram only has meaning in the context of test. Test is unavoidable. There's no escaping from imtihanat, from tests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no running away from that. We can't escape from that. This is why in riwayat, in hadith, it's recommended, don't say, Ya Allah, don't give me the test of disease. Ya Allah, don't test me at all, don't give me any test, no. When we are instructed to make du'as and to inquire about our tests in ahadith and riwayat, Prophet, A'imma, they tell us, look, make du'a like this. Say, Ya Allah, test me with wealth, not with poverty. Ya Allah, test me with health, not with sickness. Because even wealth is a test. Even health is a test. test takes variety of forms in our lives. And so don't think that test is only the difficult things that we run into. A lot of brothers come and they say, brother, I need a good wife. I want to get married. I want a good wife. Help me find a wife. We say, brother, a good wife is a test also. Just as much as a bad wife is a test. And you don't know, maybe what's good for you is a bad wife. Maybe this is the test that you need to grow. This is the test that's going to cause us to develop. Let's not leave the sisters out. Sisters, they want to get married, they want a good husband. Sisters, be patient with your test. Maybe these husbands that you've been given, they're a test from Allah for you. Exercise patience in that test. In good things and in bad things, each and every one of them, things that we like, things that we dislike, each and every one of them is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. So we should come to this understanding first and foremost that we've been created imtihani. We've been created for test. There's no escape from it. Don't believe the lies that are propagated in the West that the ideal life is a life of ease. That we could sit out in our easy recliner, put our feet up, have some iced tea next to us, and something on the big screen TV, and this is the ideal of life. They want us to think that the ideal of life is a life that is easy. We can keep our feet up and enjoy our life. This can never happen, will never happen. Test is an integral part of life. If it's something difficult, it's a test. And if it's something enjoyable, it's also a test. There's no escaping from this fundamental of test. So let's dive right in because we've only got a few days and I want to go over some of these things with you to some depth, inshallah. How do we begin then? Where do we start from? Let's look into the philosophy of testing. Why does Allah test us? How come we can't have an easy life, put our feet up, drink iced tea, watch TV, play Xbox, Baba, enjoy life? How come life has to be filled with tests to that degree that when one test goes out the door, another one comes in the window? When we escape to the left from one test, another test comes from the right. Why is it that Allah tests us and keeps us under test? And over the next few nights, we're going to try to answer these questions. For tonight, though, I want to direct your attention. Be honest with you, I'm a much better teacher than I am a lecturer. So I'm going to give you homework. In Nahj al-Balagha, Sermon 192 is known as Khutbatul Qasi'ah. It's one of the longest khutbahs in Nahj al-Balagha. Really, we don't have the time to go in depth concerning this khutbah this evening. It's a very deep, very profound khutbah. Go home, read it for yourself. Inshallah. Google it now on your telephone. Look it up. Khutbatul Qasi'ah. Qaf, Alif, Sad, Ain, Ta marbuta. It's sermon number 192. In this sermon, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, in the So, in this khutbah, Imam Ali gives one of the philosophies behind testing. Why does Allah test us? How come Allah tests us? What is the aim, the plan of Allah in testing us? Imam Ali says, Allah tests us إخراجا للتكبر, so that takabbur, arrogance, can be removed from our hearts. One of the reasons that we are tested by Allah is to remove takabbur, arrogance. Now, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam mentions this, that this is one of the main reasons why Allah tests us. And I want you to understand why it's so important that takabbur be removed from the heart. Arrogance be removed from the heart. Number one, arrogance is the chief akhlaqi difficulty, problem that each and every one of us face. There is nobody that is immune from arrogance. Nobody is immune from that. Ulama, big ulama, with big kuluft amama on their head, big thick amama on their head, they can be victims of takabbur also, just like the simple person in the audience. Takabbur comes, arrogance comes in many different sizes and shapes and types. It's not always one type of takabbur. Arrogance is the #1 personality fault that we as human beings are afflicted with. And amongst the faults that we have, akhlaqi weaknesses that we encounter in our life, arrogance is #1. You know, my kids eat more than me. I've got like a 9-year-old. Maybe she eats as much as some of the men in here. When she sits down to a plate of food, she eats. Me, I can't eat half the amount of food she eats. They make fun of me. They say, Baba, you're our daddy and we eat more than you. What kind of Baba is this? Eat this little bit of food. I said, look, my test is not food. Maybe your test is food. My test is not food. Everybody's tested according to their own degree. Each and every one of us have specific tests that are related to our own personalities and our own spiritual condition. But one test that all of us face together as a group of people, as human beings, whether Muslim or ghayra Muslim, mu'min, ghayra mu'min, it doesn't matter whether you're from here or from there. One thing that all human beings have to deal with is takabbur, is arrogance. And it's not one of the problems we have, it is the main issue that we face in our lives, is arrogance. Arrogance, why is arrogance such a danger to us? How is it that people become afflicted with arrogance? What is it that causes us to become sick with this disease of arrogance? Send us salawat and we'll explain that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we call him Allahu Akbar. Allah is great. We come from greatness. The greatest has created us. Inside of us, we are yearning for and seeking greatness. This is one thing one of the brothers and I were speaking about today. When you go on the street, when you ride on the highways, when you go to school, whether it's high school or college, or when you go to work, understand something. The people you go to school with, the people you work with, the people you are in the streets with, that are your neighbors in the neighborhoods with you, they are no different from you. They want the same things you want. They desire the same things we desire. We all want greatness. Why? Because our source is greatness. That being that created us is greatness. And so we desire greatness in our own lives. You can look at the young men, when they want to get married, they don't look for somebody mediocre. They want greatness. Sisters, when they want to choose a husband, they don't choose some brother that's riding a bicycle, working at McDonald's. No, they want greatness. When you go and you buy a car, you don't go to the car dealership and say, give me the rustiest car you have on the lot. No. You go there, you want greatness, you desire greatness. I want a nice car. When we buy houses, it's the same way. Inside of us, we desire greatness, we yearn for greatness, we long for greatness. What happens with the human being, though, is in this pursuit of greatness, in seeking and searching for greatness, we can lose our way and forget the path and forget what is the source of greatness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we make a mistake and we begin to think that we are great. And this is a great danger, a very big danger for us. That we forget that the source of greatness is Allah, and we start to think that, no, I'm great. I'm fantastic. I can do this. I'm great. And this leads to an arrogance inside of us. This is how arrogance affects each and every human being to different degrees. Why? Because our source is greatness. We desire greatness. We want greatness in our life. And when we pursue that and go after that and want to attain that and achieve that, it's possible that we make a mistake and think that Allah isn't great, we're great. We forget about the greatness of Allah and start to think that we are great. I did this through my own intellect. I achieved this through my own strength. I've done this all on my own. I mean, look at, we forget about other human beings that have helped us. So what about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? One of the reasons that takabbur and arrogance affects us the way it does is because we are seeking and searching for greatness, and some of us have made that mistake about the source of greatness. We've misunderstood what is the source of greatness. Rather than saying the source of greatness is Allah, we say, no, I'm great. I'm the source of greatness. I am the one who have achieved all those things. When in fact, we would have never been able to achieve anything without the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat. Now don't think that arrogance, takabbur, is only defined by certain characteristics. When I say takabbur, kibr, arrogance, what comes to our mind is some guy that puffs up his chest and he speaks loud, he points fingers, he looks down on us. And this is the interpretation we generally have of arrogance. This is the picture we have of arrogance. Arrogant people are people that pretend like they're bigger and more powerful than you, smarter than you, better looking than you, in any way better than you, and try to lord that over you and portray that over you that, hey, I'm great and you're nothing. This is not the only manifestation of greatness, of arrogance. We have to be on our guard against arrogance in its various forms. You know one of the most deadly types of arrogance? The guy that shakes your hand like his hand is paralyzed. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you, brother? I'm small, so very small. I sit here at the foot of the mimbar because I'm so small. I'm a nobody. This guy, when he comes to you, he speaks like he's been fasting for months. And when he shakes your hand, you want to know, Baba, are you sick? Are you weak? What's wrong with this hand? This also is a type of takabbur. He says, I'm going to make myself small, and in making myself small in front of the people, I'll become big. And so people come and they see me sitting at the paya mimbar, at the bottom of the mimbar, and I speak so soft. And when I shake hands so soft. This is a type of takabbur also. This is a type of arrogance also. And we have to be on our guard against arrogance in its variety of forms. It doesn't just come in one form, the guy who talks rough and holds up his head high and thinks he's better than you. Sometimes it comes from the guy who says that he's less than you, but in his heart he feels that he's better than you. This is one type of arrogance. Arrogance comes in many ways, various forms. Arrogance is that #1 barrier to gaining closeness to Allah. And that's why Allah tests us. If you have forgotten who is great, if you have forgotten what is the source of greatness, then Allah will test you so that you can become aware of who is great, only Allah. Become aware of your own shortcomings and your own faults. This is why Allah tests us. So when Allah tests us, He says to remove takabbur from the heart, to remove arrogance from the heart. Why? Because if someone is in love with themselves, then they cannot have love of Allah in their heart also. This heart of ours, it's desires to be filled. Every one of us is looking for love and care and attention. Every one of us. No one here is exempt from that. No one on the street is exempt from that. No one at work, no one at school. Everyone is seeking